I could feel the tension in the air before I even sat down. My mom, with her perfectly coiffed hair and smile that never quite reached her eyes, was arranging the plates like this dinner was the most important thing she'd ever put together. The dim light from the chandelier above cast a warm glow on everything, but it didn't hide the cracks in the act we were all putting on. This was supposed to be my birthday dinner, but it felt more like a performance, and I was just the unwilling star. Mom shot me a look, half pride, half desperation, like she needed me to play my part and smile. I nodded, forcing a grin, but inside I was already counting the minutes until I could escape. Clara, my perfect sister, was at the other end of the table, her glossy hair falling perfectly around her shoulders, her dress something I could never afford. She kept glancing at me, almost like she was trying to be sweet, but it didn't land. We both knew the script. She was successful, and I was, well, not. "So Ruby," Clara began, her voice way too bright, "I heard you got a promotion at that little nonprofit you're at." She said it like it was a question, like it wasn't something to be proud of. I could hear the quiet judgment wrapped in those words. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "It's a small organization, but it's important work." "Oh, I'm sure." Clara smiled, but it was tight, like she was holding back something. Her eyes flicked over to Mom, who was already setting down the wine glasses a little too forcefully, as if she was trying to control the room with her movements. The conversation shifted to some vacation they'd just come back from, talk about crystal clear waters and high-end restaurants, and I tuned out. I'd always been the odd one out, the unrefined one, even though I'd never asked for it. Then came Clara's gift. I knew the moment I saw the box in her hands, it wasn't going to be good. She slid it toward me, eyes shining with something I couldn't quite name. "Happy birthday, Ruby," she said, her voice a little too soft, too rehearsed. "I thought this would be fun for you. You've always been curious about your roots." It was an ancestry DNA test kit. My stomach dropped. "Oh, thanks," I said, but my voice sounded flat. I didn't know what to feel. Was this supposed to be a nice gesture, or was Clara just trying to prove something? I couldn't help but wonder if this was her way of reminding me I wasn't truly one of them, like there was something wrong with me that had to be explained. As I sat there, watching my family pretend everything was perfect, I realized I wasn't just an outsider in this room. I was an outsider in my own life. I sat there long after the dinner was over, staring at the DNA test kit Clara had given me, trying to figure out why it was bothering me so much. It wasn't the idea of finding out where I came from that got under my skin. It was the way she handed it to me, like it was supposed to be some kind of revelation, like my identity wasn't enough without a little genetic proof to back it up. The whole night had been one long performance, and Clara, with her polished words and flawless smile, was the star. I wasn't even sure what I was anymore. Always the younger sister. Always the one compared to Clara, the one who never measured up. My parents had always talked about her career like she was walking on water, but when they mentioned mine, it was like they were trying to disguise how unimpressed they were. "Nonprofits are fine," they'd say. "But they don't exactly pay the bills, do they?" Or, "Well, it's good you're helping people, but Clara's doing something important." It didn't take long to realize I was never going to be the daughter who impressed them. I'd always be the one who worked too hard for too little. Clara was their golden girl, the one who made it. And me, I was just the one who existed in her shadow. I never asked to be different, but I sure felt like I was. So with a sigh, I opened the box and read the instructions. It was simple enough: spit in a tube, send it off, and wait. I wasn't even sure why I was bothering. What was I hoping to find? Maybe I was just tired of the constant whispers behind my back, tired of hearing the way they'd talk about me like I didn't belong. I pulled the cap off the little vial and spat into it, watching the droplets fall into the tube. My hands were steady, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't stop thinking about how, growing up, every single moment felt like a reminder that I was never enough. I always saw how my parents looked at Clara, like she was the epitome of success. It didn't help that Clara played her part, always nodding along with their praise, smiling her perfect smile. She'd been the one who always had the right words to say, the right friends to be around, the right job. I remembered that one time in high school when my mom said, in front of everyone, "Ruby, honey, just try to keep up, okay?" I was 14, sitting at the dinner table, watching Clara's golden smile light up the room. My mom didn't mean it to hurt, but it did. It always did. That feeling of being small, of never fitting in, had only gotten worse as I grew older. When I started at that nonprofit, it was like no one took me seriously. They would have preferred I had followed in Clara's footsteps, gotten a job in some corporate office, climbed a ladder. But I wasn't Clara. I didn't have her drive to win, her obsession with status, and honestly, it wasn't something I wanted. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if that made me broken somehow. Maybe my genes were flawed. Maybe there was something wrong with me that made me want to help people instead of chasing numbers on a paycheck. I slid the tube into the box, sealed it up, and hesitated for a moment. Maybe I was looking for answers. Maybe I was looking for some kind of validation, something to prove I wasn't just the odd one out, the second best. Maybe if my DNA told me I was different in a way that made sense, it would be easier to accept everything that had happened to me. I sealed the envelope and stuck the label on. It was a stupid test, a waste of time, but at the same time, I couldn't let it go. The nagging thought that maybe, just maybe, there was something about me that I didn't know kept me from tossing it in the trash. I didn't know if I was looking for a story that would fit, or if I just needed a reason to finally stop feeling like an outsider in my own life. Either way, I dropped the box into the mailbox the next day, unsure if I was doing this for answers or just to prove something to myself. I didn't know what I was hoping to find. All I knew was that I was tired of being the girl who was never enough. A week later, I was sitting on the couch when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, so I almost ignored it. But something told me to pick up. Maybe it was the weird feeling still lingering from the DNA test. Hello? Hi, is this Ruby Bennett? A woman's voice, calm, but something in it made my stomach tighten. Yeah, this is her. Hi, Ruby. This is Emma from GeneLink, the DNA testing service. I'm calling about your results. I blinked. My results? I just sent the test in last week. I understand. However, there's a discrepancy with the information we received. We need you to contact us as soon as possible so we can clarify things. My heart skipped a beat. Discrepancy? What do you mean? I couldn't help the suspicion creeping up. We've noticed that the markers we found don't match what we have on file for your family lineage. It's important that we clear this up quickly. I swallowed hard. That doesn't make sense. My family's from here. What are you saying exactly? I can't discuss the specifics over the phone, but it would be best if you get in touch with us immediately. We'll be happy to explain more once you call back. The call ended before I could ask anything more, and I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand. Discrepancy. What the hell did that even mean? I had no idea what to make of it. Was this a mistake, or was it something else? I didn't know, but I wasn't about to lose my mind over a mix-up. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe there was more to this than I'd signed up for. I didn't call the company back right away. Instead, I texted Marcus, my cousin, the one person I felt like I could trust. Marcus was different from the rest of them, less polished, more real. He didn't seem to care much about what anyone else thought. He wasn't obsessed with appearances or money like my parents. I typed quickly, my fingers tense. Hey, I got a weird call about the DNA test. They said there's a discrepancy with my results. I'm freaking out a little. Can you talk? I didn't expect him to respond immediately, but within minutes, my phone buzzed with a text from him. What kind of discrepancy? That sounds weird. Meet me at the diner. I need to tell you something. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, heart pounding. Marcus had always been a little more in tune with the family drama, especially with all the stuff that went unsaid. When I walked into the diner, he was already there, sitting in the corner booth, staring into his coffee like it could give him all the answers. I slid into the seat across from him. Okay, talk. What's going on? Marcus looked up, his face serious. I overheard something I wasn't supposed to hear. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? He lowered his voice, leaning in like he was about to spill some big secret. I heard your parents talking the other night. They didn't know I was there. They were talking about you, about your genetics. I frowned, trying to piece it together. Genetics? What about my genetics? They were saying, well, that you don't have the same DNA as them. Not exactly, anyway. They were freaking out about it, but they didn't want you to know. I blinked, trying to process what he was saying. Wait, you're saying they know something about me that I don't? Marcus nodded. I'm not sure what they meant, but it's not just the test. It's like they've been hiding something for years, Ruby. Something about your bloodline. My mind raced, and I felt a knot forming in my stomach. All this time, all these years of feeling like I didn't quite fit, and now I was hearing this? I'd always wondered why I didn't look like my family, why I didn't think the same way they did. Maybe I wasn't just imagining it. I rubbed my temples, the weight of it all hitting me in a way it hadn't before. So what? I'm not really one of them. Is that it? Marcus hesitated, then shook his head. I don't know. But I do know something's up. And whatever it is, it's bigger than just the DNA test. You need to figure it out, I sat back, the air thick between us. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just brush this off. The family I had known all my life, my parents, Clara, they were hiding something from me. And it felt like whatever it was finally starting to unravel. The letter came 2 days later, thick and official looking. The envelope was white, with black lettering that made my stomach tighten. Jenkins and Associates, Family Legal Affairs. It didn't take a genius to figure out who the letter was from. I didn't need any more reminders of the weirdness surrounding my family, but here it was. I opened it slowly, reading the first few lines over and over, half hoping I'd misunderstood. Dear Ruby Bennett, we are writing to inform you that an urgent matter regarding your late grandmother's estate requires your immediate attention. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to arrange a meeting. The letter was brief but clear. Urgent. I had no idea what this was about, but I had a bad feeling. Something about this whole thing felt wrong. I tried to ignore it for a day, but the unease only grew. So I called the number at the bottom of the letter, and within hours, I had an appointment. The next morning, I walked into Mr. Jenkins' office, a modern building that looked way too clean and important for someone like me. I was early, but the receptionist didn't seem to care, directing me to a plush waiting area with leather chairs and too much gold trim. Everything felt stiff, like I didn't belong. Mr. Jenkins was waiting for me when I stepped into his office, tall in his 50s, with thin, wire-framed glasses perched at the end of his nose. He gestured for me to sit, his demeanor businesslike, but there was something in his eyes, something knowing that made me uneasy. Miss Bennett, he said, his voice cool and professional. Thank you for coming. I know this may be unexpected. Yeah, unexpected is one way to put it, I said, sitting across from him. My voice sounded sharp, more irritated than I meant it to. He didn't flinch. Instead, he folded his hands in front of him, his eyes fixed on me. I understand this must be a shock, but I'm afraid the matter is quite serious. Your grandmother, Evelyn, set up a trust several years ago, one that you are, by law, the rightful heir to. I blinked, a sharp knot of confusion forming in my chest. A trust? What are you talking about? What does this have to do with me? Mr. Jenkins exhaled slowly, like he was weighing how much to tell me. This trust was created with specific stipulations. It can only be accessed by someone who possesses particular genetic markers that, according to our records, you carry. It was important to your grandmother that only someone with your exact genetic composition inherit the estate. I stared at him, the words not making any sense in my head. What do you mean? Are you saying I'm the heir to some fortune? He leaned forward, his expression serious. Yes, but it's crucial that you act quickly. The assets have been frozen until we can confirm that you're able to access them. There are legal requirements to finalize the inheritance, and they must be completed soon. If you don't take action now, the opportunity may be lost. I shook my head, trying to catch up. Wait, are you telling me that my grandmother set up this trust for me, and I can't get it unless I have the right DNA? I felt like I was going to choke on the absurdity of it all. That's correct, he said, glancing at a stack of papers on his desk. We've already confirmed the results of your genetic test match the necessary markers. You are, without a doubt, the rightful heir. Your grandmother knew exactly what she was doing. I was still processing what he was saying, but a strange feeling of empowerment started creeping in. A sense that maybe for once, I wasn't just the person who didn't belong. That maybe this, whatever this was, could be my ticket out of the shadows. Out of their shadow, I swallowed hard. And what happens if I don't take the inheritance? What happens if I just walk away from it? Mr. Jenkins looked at me with something like caution, almost like he was expecting this question. I would strongly advise against it, Miss Bennet. This trust was meant for you. Your grandmother's intentions were clear. If you choose not to accept it, the estate will pass to other relatives, and it could complicate things legally. I nodded slowly, the weight of what he was saying sinking in. Right, so, I'm the chosen one. He gave a thin smile, almost sympathetic. In a manner of speaking, yes. I sat back in the chair, my mind spinning. What was I supposed to do now? The family I'd always felt like an outsider in. And now I was the one with the power, the one with the inheritance. Why me? I asked, before I could stop myself. He gave a small, almost unreadable smile. That's something you'll have to discuss with your family, Miss Bennet. There's more to this story than you know. His words landed heavily in the room. More to this story? What the hell was he hinting at? But before I could ask anything else, he stood up and handed me a thick file, full of legal documents. I suggest you look over these, and we can discuss the next steps. The trust is ready for you to claim. Should you decide to move forward, I left his office feeling like I had stepped into a whole new world. One where I wasn't the second choice, where I wasn't the failure. For the first time in years, it felt like I was on the edge of something bigger than me, something that might finally let me escape everything I'd hated about my family. But as I walked to my car, holding that folder in my hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just opened a door to something far darker than I could have ever imagined. The moment I walked into the house, I knew something was off. The air felt thick, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the explosion. I was holding my own, the thick manila folder from Mr. Jenkins tucked tightly under my arm. The papers inside it weren't just legal documents. They were the key to everything I had been questioning. And I wasn't leaving here today until I had answers. Mom was in the kitchen, making one of her over-the-top salads. Perfectly sliced tomatoes, fancy greens, little edible flowers sprinkled on top like she was hosting some sort of Michelin star dinner. But when she turned to look at me, her smile faltered. "Ruby," she said, her voice a little too bright. "What's this about? I thought you were going to take the afternoon off. Have a little time to relax, especially after the news you got recently." "Actually, no," I said, slamming the folder onto the counter with a little more force than necessary. "I've got a few things I need to talk about." Clara was sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale when she saw the folder. She immediately straightened up, all prim and proper, but there was something about her expression that looked like she was confused, maybe even blindsided. And I was done being left in the dark. "Ruby, what is this?" Clara asked, her voice soft but tight. "I'm not asking for your opinion, Clara." I didn't even look at her as I pulled out the legal papers. I tossed them in front of Mom. These came from Mr. Jenkins. Apparently, Grandma Evelyn set up a trust. And guess what? I'm the heir. The real heir. Mom's eyes went wide, and she flinched back as if I'd slapped her. But I wasn't going to let her get away with pretending everything was fine anymore. I leaned in, narrowing my eyes. "What the hell is going on, Mom? Why didn't you ever tell me about any of this?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. The silence stretched long enough for me to hear the clock ticking on the wall. Clara shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her hands folded neatly in front of her, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was barely holding it together. Finally, Mom exhaled. "Ruby, it's complicated. There's nothing you need to worry about," I snapped, my voice rising without meaning to. "Nothing I need to worry about? Are you serious? I'm suddenly the rightful heir to a fortune, and you're telling me it's nothing?" She shifted, her gaze dropping to the counter. "It's just, this isn't how we wanted you to find out. It's not something to be..." "To be what?" I cut her off. "To be disruptive? To mess up the perfect little life you and Clara have built?" Clara's face tightened, and for a second, I thought she was going to say something. But then her eyes flicked to Mom, and she stayed silent. That's when I realized they knew. They'd known all along. "Ruby," Mom said, her voice small now. She looked like she was trying to hold herself together, but the cracks were starting to show. "Evelyn always had her suspicions about your father. She thought..." She hesitated, her words stalling, like they were too heavy for her to say. "What did she think?" I demanded. What's going on? Mom turned away, her fingers tightening around the salad tongs like she was trying to ground herself in something. Evelyn thought that you weren't her biological granddaughter. I felt like the floor had just dropped out from under me. My vision blurred for a second, and I had to grab the edge of the counter to steady myself. What? You mean you think I'm not really your daughter? Clara finally spoke, her voice strained. That's not exactly what Mom means. She stood up, walking over to the counter like she was trying to smooth things over. It's just, there were rumors. Things Evelyn never felt comfortable asking you about. I stared at Clara, trying to piece it together. Rumors? So Grandma thought I wasn't… She thought your father wasn't your real father, Mom interrupted quickly, her face a mix of guilt and something I couldn't quite place. She thought there had been an affair. Years ago, with someone else. I felt my stomach churn, the room spinning as if I'd been hit with something. Wait a minute, what the hell are you saying? Are you telling me that my entire life has been a lie? That you… My voice cracked as I tried to get the words out, but it wasn't just shock anymore. It was something darker, something heavier. Clara's face went white, and I could see the discomfort she'd been holding in, the realization settling over her like a weight. Ruby, I didn't know. Mom didn't. No, I snapped, holding up a hand to stop her. This isn't about you. This is about you two. About the fact that you never told me, that you've been keeping this from me for years. Mom took a deep breath, her voice cracking. We didn't know how to tell you, Ruby. We thought keeping it quiet would make things easier for everyone. The silence stretched out between us, thick and suffocating. I wanted to scream, to break something, but all I could feel was a cold fury building in my chest. So this was it. This was the family secret. So what's next? I said, my voice low and sharp. You give me the fortune, but I'm not even your real kid? Clara's discomfort deepened, and Mom went quiet. I was done asking. It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about everything they'd kept from me, everything they'd hidden in the name of their perfect little life. I had no idea what the hell was coming next, but for the first time, I felt like I finally had the power to face whatever it was. The envelope arrived the next day, thick and official looking, just like the one from Mr. Jenkins. I could feel the weight of it before I even opened it. The paper heavier than anything I'd ever received in my life. I ripped it open, the anticipation making my hands shake, and pulled out the documents inside. My heart pounded as I scanned the first page, the words blurring together for a moment. Subject: Transfer of Estate. Evelyn Bennett Trust. I had to read it twice before the words started to make sense. A $12 million fortune. My grandmother's fortune. Left to me. Me. Not Clara. Not anyone else. And it wasn't just money. It was everything. Properties, investments, assets that could change my life overnight. I couldn't breathe as I held the papers in my hand, the weight of it suffocating me. Part of me wanted to scream, to rip the documents to pieces and throw them away. But another part of me, the part that had spent my whole life feeling like an afterthought, like the second choice, couldn't deny the rush of power that surged through me. I was the one with the inheritance. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Part of me wanted to shout it from the rooftops. I was the one who mattered. But another part of me felt like a fraud, like I was stepping into shoes that weren't mine to fill. The guilt gnawed at me, but the excitement couldn't be ignored. $12 million. $12 million I never thought I'd have a chance at. I didn't waste any time. I walked straight to the kitchen, where Clara and Mom were already there, talking in hushed tones. The tension was thick, the air still charged from the conversation the day before. As soon as I walked in, they both froze. What is it? Clara asked, her voice stiff. She was still playing the part of the perfect daughter, her smile strained, her posture straight. But I could see the crack in her armor, the way her eyes darted toward the papers in my hand. I didn't say anything at first. I just dropped the documents on the table in front of them. The sound of the papers hitting the wood was enough to silence the room. Mom's face paled as she saw what I was holding. Ruby? Yeah, I read it, I said, cutting her off. You didn't think I would, but I did. The trust, the inheritance, it's mine. Clara's face twisted into something between disbelief and rage, and I could feel her entire body tense. What? How is that possible? Apparently, I said, my voice cold. Grandma Evelyn made sure the inheritance went to me. Clara opened her mouth like she was about to argue, but no sound came out. I saw the anger flicker behind her eyes, but she quickly masked it with a forced calm. You don't know what you're talking about. There's been some mistake. No mistake, I said, folding my arms over my chest. It's all here. $12 million, Clara. It's mine. Not yours. Mom looked like she was about to explode, her hands trembling as she clutched the counter. Ruby, this isn't how it was supposed to be. You don't understand. Your grandmother, she was obsessed with that clause. She always said you were the one, and what about me? Clara's voice finally broke, her frustration spilling out. I've worked my entire life for this. I've done everything you wanted, everything you've asked me to do. And now she just gives it to you? I felt the bitterness in her words, the edge of jealousy that had been building for years, and I realized in that moment how much she'd wanted this, how much she thought she deserved it. She'd been counting on it, just like Mom had. They'd always assumed that Clara would be the one to take the throne, but now, it was mine.
I didn't ask for it, Clara, I said, my voice soft but firm. But I'm not going to walk away from it either. You didn't get it because it wasn't meant for you.
It was meant for me. Clara stood there for a moment, frozen, before her face twisted in anger. You think you deserve this? She spat. You think that just because you've been playing the martyr your whole life, you get everything? I could feel the sting of her words, but I didn't back down. I'm not playing anything. I didn't ask for this, but I'm not going to apologize for it either. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. You don't understand what this means, Ruby. The family's already been keeping secrets from me for years, I snapped. I'm done with their lies. The silence between us was deafening. Clara's anger simmered, her face a mask of disbelief and fury. Mom stood there, looking defeated, her hands clasped tightly together. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like an outsider. I didn't feel small. I felt like I was finally in control. I had the power now. I was the one with the leverage, the one who could make decisions for myself. But as I looked at their faces, I couldn't shake the weight of it all. There was guilt, sure, but there was also freedom. $12 million was a lot to process, but it was more than just money. It was my chance to break free from the expectations, from the years of feeling less than. It was mine, and I wasn't about to let anyone take it away. Clara's eyes burned into me as I stood there, the documents still between us, the truth hanging in the air. This wasn't just about money. This was about everything I had ever wanted, to be seen, to be enough. And now I had the chance to show them who I really was. The days after the inheritance felt like I was stepping into a new life, one that wasn't quite mine yet, but was getting closer with each passing hour. I couldn't even look at my parents the same way anymore, let alone Clara. Mom called me a few times, but I didn't pick up. I didn't want to hear her voice trying to justify everything, trying to convince me that it was all for my own good, that everything had been done out of love. It was all the same. They always got what they wanted, and I always got the scraps. I started making changes almost immediately. I pulled out of my father's construction firm, the one that always felt like a lifeline they tried to shove down my throat. The company that was supposed to make me feel grateful for everything they gave me. I wasn't grateful, not anymore. I redirected my new wealth, every cent I could manage, into causes I actually cared about. I set up scholarships for underprivileged kids, donated to organizations that helped women in need. It wasn't about making me feel good. It was about making me feel something for once, something real, something that had nothing to do with them. Clara's first attempt to reel me back in came after a few days of silence. She showed up at my apartment, her eyes wide, too eager. Ruby, she started, her voice sweet, like she was trying to butter me up. I've been thinking about what's best for the family. We've been through so much, and, I've always had your back. I just think maybe you should share some of this with us. Help out with Mom and Dad's business. It would be a good move, Ruby. I laughed. But it wasn't a real laugh. It was a sharp, bitter sound. Share? You mean give you some of my money? Her smile didn't falter. Not just money, Ruby. It's about keeping things in the family. It's about making sure everything stays strong. You don't need all of it, the audacity. I was still shaking my head as I stood up from the couch. No, Clara, you don't get it. This isn't about you. It's not about them, either. It's about me, finally having control of my own life. I stared at her, my heart pounding, as I saw her expression shift, just for a second, into something close to anger before it was hidden behind that perfect smile. You don't have to be so dramatic, she said, her tone now colder. You're just going to walk away from everything we've built, from what's rightfully ours? Yours? I couldn't believe it. Clara, this is mine, not yours, not theirs. I don't owe you anything. The words came out before I even thought about them. But they were the truth. Every part of me that had been afraid to speak up, to stand up to them, was now shouting from the inside out. She stepped back, eyes flashing. You think you're better than me now? You think this makes you special? You're still just the girl who is too different to fit in, Ruby. Don't forget that stung, but I didn't let it show, not anymore. I'm not better than you. I'm just done being invisible. Before she could say anything else, I turned on my heel and left the room, my head spinning, but somehow clearer than it had been in years. The calls from my parents started coming in faster after that. They were desperate now, trying to get me to sit down and talk about it. Talk about what? Everything they'd built on the assumption that I would fall in line? That I'd be grateful for whatever scraps they decided to give me? No thanks. I finally answered when Dad called late one afternoon. Ruby, he said, his voice tight. We need to have a conversation. This can't go on. You've made a decision that's going to hurt all of us. I exhaled slowly, the weight of it all pressing down. I didn't make the decision, Dad. You did. All of you. For years there was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him shuffling papers, probably sitting in his office, probably in his little world where everything was still perfect. And he still controlled the strings. You're being irrational. This isn't about you, Ruby. It's about the family. I closed my eyes, feeling the knot in my stomach twist. This is about me, Dad. It always was, and you never saw it. I could hear my voice shaking slightly, but I wasn't backing down. You made me feel small, like I wasn't good enough, and now I'm finally making a choice for myself. That's something you can't take away from me. Another long pause. Then, his voice low, almost a growl. You've really changed. I didn't answer right away. There was nothing left to say. He'd already made his choice about who I was, and now I was making mine. The hardest part, honestly, was knowing how much I'd always wanted them to see me. But now, with this wealth, this power, I realized I didn't need them to see me anymore. I didn't need to prove anything to them. I could finally do what I wanted, with no one's approval needed. Later that night, Clara tried again. This time it was different. She didn't come at me with sweet words or fake concern. She came at me like a lioness trying to reclaim her territory. You owe me, Ruby, she said, her voice low and threatening. You're not going to keep all that money for yourself. I stood in the doorway of the living room, feeling something snap inside me. I owe you nothing. Not a cent. Not an apology. Her face turned bright red, her lips trembling with rage. You think you can just walk away from everything? From us? I've been the one who always tried to make things work. I've been the one who did everything you never could. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the words came out sharper than I expected. And look where that got you. Still trying to control everything. You're not going to get a dime of my inheritance, Clara. Not a penny. The room went quiet. For the first time, Clara didn't know how to respond. The silence between us felt final. I didn't know what was coming next. But I knew one thing. The family I'd spent my whole life trying to be a part of was no longer the family I needed. And I wasn't going to let them drag me down anymore. The gala was everything I had always imagined, but never been a part of. The grand ballroom was all gold and crystal, a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns, their laughter and chatter filling the air like a well-rehearsed performance. The kind of people who had always looked right through me were mingling with the same ease they always had, self-assured, confident in their place in the world. And yet, there I was, stepping into their world for the first time, my feet not quite sure where they were supposed to land. I'd been invited this year, but it wasn't out of kindness. The invitation came because of the money my inheritance. They were hoping I'd donate, blend in, smile, and be another wealthy face in the crowd. And for a while, I debated whether I should just let it pass, fade into the background like I always had. But then, I remembered everything. The years of being overlooked, underestimated, disregarded. This wasn't just about money. This was about me finally standing up for myself, proving to everyone, including my family, that I wasn't just someone who would be used. I walked to the center of the room, my heart pounding in my chest, and took the microphone. The chatter died down immediately, like the crowd sensed the shift. I glanced around at the sea of polished faces, people who had never cared about anything other than status, about appearances. But I was done pretending. I want to announce something tonight, I began, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. I've decided to donate a portion of my inheritance to an organization that helps underprivileged youth. It's time to use the wealth I've received to do something that actually matters. The silence that followed was so thick, I could practically hear their thoughts. But it wasn't their approval I was looking for. It was mine. Before anyone could speak, I felt a presence behind me. Clara. Of course she'd show up furious, like she always did when things didn't go her way. She was already heading toward me, eyes blazing, her jaw clenched so tight I thought it might snap. You think this makes you a better person, Clara's voice rang out. Loud enough for everyone to hear, but tight with rage. You think giving away some of your money is going to make you a saint? I turned to face her, unshaken, my posture straight, holding my ground. No, Clara, I said, calm but firm. I'm not trying to be a saint. I'm just trying to be real, something you clearly don't know how to be. Her eyes flared with indignation, but I could see the cracks in her perfect image, the anger bubbling under the surface. You really think you can just step into this world and change everything? Clara laughed, but it was bitter, hollow. I didn't let her words get to me. I don't want to be one of you, Clara. I never did. I'm finally done pretending to fit in. The crowd was watching now, waiting for the next move, and I wasn't about to let Clara continue her game. I stepped forward, my voice loud enough to carry across the room, to everyone who had ever ignored me, doubted me, or tried to tear me down. You all know Clara, I said, meeting her eyes with a coolness I hadn't known I was capable of. The one who's always been perfect, always played the role of the golden child. The one who always knows what to say, how to look, who to be. But here's the truth. Clara's been using her charm to manipulate this family for years. She's been acting like she's the one who deserves everything, while tearing down anyone who got in her way. Clara's face went pale, her expression faltering, as I continued. She's been so busy trying to get everything handed to her that she didn't care who she stepped on to get there. And you know what? I'm done being the one she walks over. I'm done being the one she tries to control. Clara opened her mouth to argue, but the words didn't come. She looked like she was choking on them, struggling to regain her composure as everyone watched. But the cracks were too wide now. She wasn't the golden girl anymore, not to me, not to anyone here. Clara, I said, my tone icy, you may have thought you were the only one who mattered in this family, but I'm done letting you pretend I'm nothing. I'm done letting you pretend that this— I motioned to the room, to the wealth, to everything she'd been clawing for— was ever yours. The silence in the room was deafening, and I could feel the weight of their judgment, their thoughts on me. But I didn't care anymore. I had finally said what needed to be said. I had exposed the truth, and it felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. Clara's eyes were full of fury, but there was something else there now, something I hadn't seen before, something that looked like fear. She wasn't the one in control anymore. I'm not asking for your approval, I said, facing the crowd now, but I'm done being invisible. This is my life, and I'm making my own choices from here on out. I don't need anyone's permission to be myself, and I'm not going to be anyone's pawn anymore. I turned and walked away from the crowd, my steps purposeful, my back straight. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a place in the world, not because they accepted me, but because I accepted myself. I wasn't going to hide anymore. I wasn't going to shrink back into the shadows just to make everyone else feel better. And when I looked over my shoulder, Clara was still standing there, her eyes full of something I couldn't quite place. Betrayal, maybe. But I didn't care. I had finally found my own voice, A few days after the gala, I got a call from a representative of my grandmother's trust. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and far too familiar with the legal jargon I had been avoiding. Miss Bennett, this is Clara Hayes from the Evelyn Bennett Trust. I'm calling to inform you that the remaining assets are now ready for transfer. We can finalize everything at your convenience. The words hung in the air for a moment, as the weight of what was coming down on me settled in. The full extent of the inheritance, the responsibility, was about to become mine. I'll need to sign a few final documents, Clara continued. It's time to officially take control of the assets. I said I'd be there the next morning. Hanging up, I realized how far I'd come from the girl who had once sat in the shadows, too scared to make waves. Now, I was the one people were scrambling to get answers from, and there was a strange comfort in that, even though the price was steep. I showed up at the office the next day, walking in like I owned the place. Maybe I did. Clara handed me the paperwork, her smile tight, her professionalism an obvious mask. Everything looks in order, she said, her eyes flicking toward the documents. But she wasn't looking at me, not really. She was looking at the wealth, the power that was no longer hers. The thought almost made me laugh. After all her manipulation, after everything she'd done to claw her way to the top, the fortune had passed to me. And the truth was, I wasn't even sure I wanted it. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was a life I hadn't asked for, but was now forced to carry. My family was falling apart because of my decisions. Clara's career had stalled. She'd lost key clients, and gossip had spread about her handling of the business. My father, always the businessman, was struggling too. His construction firm had lost contracts after I'd withdrawn my support. I could hear him on the phone, trying to salvage what he could. His voice tight with frustration. I had cut ties. I had walked away from all of it. And now, I was standing on my own, carrying the weight of decisions that had hurt the people I'd once cared about. But there was freedom in that weight. Freedom that came with finally being my own person. I took a deep breath as I signed the final documents. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with all this wealth, but I knew it wasn't going to be about keeping up with the expectations of people who had never seen me. I'd been given the chance to rewrite my story, and I was determined to make it count. When I left the office, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the streets. It felt like the world had opened up in front of me, wide and full of possibility.